We were planning our wedding. Then my cousin pulled me aside and said, "You deserve to know what she said about you that night." They kept calling him the luckiest guy in the room. Every toast circled back to it. "You hit the jackpot, man. She's one of a kind. Don't screw it up." The room glowed with warmth, soft lights strung from beam to beam, candles flickering against wine glasses, music low and safe, background noise to the laughter. She looked incredible, of course. The dress was sleek, white with off-shoulder sleeves that made her skin look like a runway, her hair pulled back in a way that said she'd spent money to look effortless. She was laughing across the room, one hand curled around a champagne flute, head thrown back as if nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. She was talking to his mom, probably about seating arrangements, or flowers, or one of the other 1,000 things she had memorized down to hex codes and swatch numbers. He was surrounded, groomsmen, cousins, coworkers. Someone from high school he hadn't seen in years made a joke about how she'd civilized him. Another handed him a glass of bourbon and told him to enjoy the last stretch of freedom. He smiled through it all. Nodded, clinked glasses, gave the kind of hell yeah responses that got people to move on, but something sat heavy in his chest. Not dread, not doubt, just something. It wasn't cold feet, it wasn't fear of commitment. It was the nagging feeling that none of these people actually knew what love meant. Not really, not the way he did. He loved her with a kind of faith he hadn't known he was capable of, had given her everything. His time, his patience, his absolute belief. When her job got hard, he sat up with her until 3 a.m. organizing decks and rewarding presentations. When her sister got sick, he drove 5 hours in silence just to hold her hand in the waiting room. He'd seen her without makeup, without answers, without armor, and still he wanted her, chose her. So yeah, when people said he was lucky, he nodded, but he always wanted to say she is too, he hadn't yet. He figured he'd save it for the vows. He reached into his jacket and touched the card tucked inside. The one with the scribbled lines he'd written at 1 a.m. last week, after she fell asleep on the couch with her hand curled around his wrist like an anchor. He hadn't told her what he wrote, wanted it to be a surprise, wanted her to cry not because he nailed the moment, but because the words hit something real. He looked at her again. She was still laughing, still perfect. Still exactly the person he'd said yes to, but the something, that weight, was still there. Maybe it was just the moment, maybe it was something else. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Marcus said it low. No urgency in his voice, but his eyes were wrong. Off, too still. The kind of still you only see in someone who's been rehearsing something they don't want to say. The reception hall wasn't loud, but the crowd buzzed, cutlery against glass, soft conversation, the occasional burst of laughter. No one noticed when Marcus pulled him away, just past the string lights, through the open patio doors, out where the air bit colder and the music faded into something distant. They walked around to the side of the venue, gravel crunching underfoot. Marcus's hands were in his pockets. He didn't say anything at first. "Everything okay?" he asked. Marcus nodded. "Too fast." Yeah, it's just..." He stopped. Looked away. "I know I'm the last person to stir anything," Marcus said. "I hate drama. I hate being in the middle of shit. I know. That's why this is hard." A pause, just wind now, the rattle of a loose sign above the catering van. Marcus shifted his weight. "You remember your engagement party?" "Yeah." "You probably don't remember everything from that night. Lot of people, lot of noise." He narrowed his eyes. "What are you trying to say?" Marcus looked at him now, fully, like he was about to hurt him and hated himself for it. "You deserve to know what she said about you that night." The words didn't land like a punch. They landed like a slow press, cold, deliberate, mean. He stared. "What do you mean, what she said?" Marcus glanced back toward the glowing windows. The sound of clinking glasses drifted on the wind. "I wasn't eavesdropping, I swear. I was just walking past the group she was with, her friends. They were talking, laughing, whatever, and she said something about you." His stomach turned. Marcus took a breath. "She said you were sweet, and that you were the safe choice, that you weren't the dream, but at least you'd never leave." Silence. "The kind that wraps around your throat." "She said it like it was funny," Marcus added. "Like it was a punchline, but no one laughed, not really, and she didn't take it back, didn't say she was kidding." He couldn't speak. "I wasn't gonna say anything. I told myself it was just nerves, alcohol, a dumb moment, but then I saw your face tonight. The way you've been moving around like everything's perfect, but you're still waiting for something to go wrong." Marcus looked down, kicked at a stone with the toe of his shoe, "And I thought if it was me, I'd want to know." The wind picked up again. Neither of them moved. He wasn't angry, not yet, but something was shifting. Slow, silent, permanent. Champagne glass in hand, Marcus had walked through the blur of laughter and voices with that casual float he always had, half in the scene, half just watching it. He didn't like crowds, didn't drink much, didn't say anything unless he meant it. It was after 11. The engagement party was winding down. People were dancing less, sitting more, music dipping into the slow, nostalgic tracks that made people text exes and hug too long. He was heading outside to catch some air when he heard it. Just a voice. Hers, light, playful, edges polished. She was standing with two of her friends. One of them was sipping something dark from a short glass, the other already barefoot, heels dangling from one hand. "I mean, look, he's sweet," she said. The word hung there for a beat too long. Marcus paused behind the corner, the edge of a support pillar hiding him just barely. "That's all I'll say," she added, voice brighter now, like she knew what she was doing. "He's not the dream, but he'll never leave, and that's more than most people get right." She laughed after she said it, not loud, not cackling, just a soft, practiced laugh that didn't need an audience to know it would land. Neither of the other girls laughed. One raised her eyebrows. The other shifted her drink between hands and said, "You're lucky he doesn't hear half the shit you say when you're tipsy." She waved it off. "He'd just tell me I'm being honest. That's the thing about nice guys. You can say anything and they'll still bring you coffee in the morning." Marcus stood there, stuck, not moving, not sure if he was supposed to. She didn't notice him, didn't even glance his way. She turned back to her friends, already onto something else, complimenting someone's shoes or mocking a guy's dance moves. But the moment had already been carved, sharp, clean. It wasn't just what she said, it was the way she said it. The way her voice didn't crack, didn't second-guess, didn't pull back even a little. She meant it. Marcus had walked away, didn't tell anyone, not then, but the words stayed. He stood outside the venue, back pressed to the cold siding, the sounds of clinking glasses and cheerful chatter muffled behind him like they belonged to someone else's night. He was barely hearing Marcus anymore, just that line. "He's sweet, that's all I'll say." It rang like a verdict, the kind of phrase people said when they'd already stopped hoping for something more. The way someone described a guy who held the door open and offered to split the bill but didn't make their stomach flip. Sweet, not thrilling, not magnetic, not unforgettable, safe, settled, a placeholder. She'd said he wasn't the dream, but at least he'd never leave. Like he was reliable in the way a Honda Civic is reliable. Like he'd always be there, warm, consistent, easy to park, while the Ferraris and the motorcycles and the reckless muscle cars burned out and left. He tried to picture her saying it, tried to give her a different tone. A teasing one. A drunk one, a flustered, misheard, poorly timed tone that could pass for nothing. But the way Marcus told it, there wasn't a crack to hide in. She meant it. She had looked at their relationship, everything they'd built, everything he'd bled for to keep strong, and defined it by what it wasn't. He wasn't the dream, he was just the one who would never leave, and she had been right about that until now. He didn't go back inside right away. He stood there for a long time just breathing, in through his nose, out through his mouth. Trying to feel his lungs, his feet, anything, trying to remember what solid ground used to feel like. The night was cool. Crickets filled the space between everything else. A car passed somewhere on the road behind the trees. He didn't cry. Didn't get angry, didn't even reach for his phone. He just stood still, hands in his pockets, staring at the dark gravel at his feet like it might rearrange into a map. She'd called him sweet, that's all I'll say. He repeated it in his head over and over until the syllables didn't mean anything anymore, until the words were just sounds. A vowel, a sigh, a flick of the tongue she probably never thought twice about. He wondered what else she'd said that night. What didn't Marcus hear? What stayed off record? He thought about the toasts from earlier, his dad raising a glass, calling them a perfect match. Her sister tearing up, saying she'd never seen her so calm. He thought about the dress fittings, the cake tastings, the hours spent mapping out the playlist for the reception because she hated cheesy wedding songs and wanted something real. She had wanted everything to look real. Maybe that's what stung. Not that she doubted him, that she believed he was the safe bet, too kind to leave, too stable to fight back. She knew she could say that and he'd still show up, still bring her flowers on Fridays, still fill her gas tank when she forgot, still let her cry in his lap on the bad days and listen like it mattered. She knew he wouldn't leave, and that made her brave, cruel in a quiet way. He stood there, hands clenched now, and thought about the vows he'd written. The way he'd spent hours tweaking the lines so they didn't sound cheesy. The way he described her, how she challenged him, how she made the world feel more vivid, how her laugh could pull him back from the edge. He'd meant every word. And now they felt stupid. Like he'd written poetry to someone who described him as dependable, the kind of guy who'd never leave. Nothing more. She was across the room, framed in soft light and wine laughter, looking exactly like someone worth loving. Risay in one hand, her other resting lightly on his mother's shoulder as they leaned in close, sharing some quiet joke or moment of tenderness he used to think only he got to see. Now he wasn't so sure. She tilted her head just slightly, smiled with that soft, polite curve of the lips she used when she wanted to disarm someone without making them feel small. His mother adored her. Everyone did, that was the thing. She was effortless in a room like this, gathered, gracious, glowing. She had a way of seeming present even when she was bored, of seeming kind even when she didn't care. He watched her take a sip from the glass. Just enough to keep her posture loose, not enough to lose the edges. Her laugh followed bright, musical, practiced, and for the first time he saw it. The polish, the design, every gesture calculated to feel unrehearsed. Every smile timed like an entrance cue. She caught his eye then across the room. Her face lit up instantly. She gave him that look, that there you are look. The one that used to make his chest swell like being loved by her was a secret he got to carry. He smiled back, automatically, and just like that she turned back to the conversation. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, feeling like a stand-in for the man she wanted to want. She looked the same, moved the same, spoke the same. But now it all felt staged. The laughter, the warmth, the way she leaned into his mom like she'd always belonged there. He wondered if she was still thinking about the things she said that night. Or if it had vanished from her memory the second she poured another drink. Maybe it wasn't the words that cut deepest. Maybe it was how easily she said them, like he'd never hear them, like he wouldn't matter enough to be hurt. Maybe she was just drunk. The words barely left his mouth before Marcus shook his head. No, he said. She wasn't slurring, she wasn't stumbling, she was sharp, clear. She knew exactly what she was saying. They were sitting on the back steps now, half hidden behind one of the decorative archways. Gravel underfoot, the hum of the party pressing against the walls behind them, too far away to touch. He ran a hand through his hair, elbow on his knee. You sure? I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. That was the thing about Marcus. He didn't do this. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't insert himself. If anything, he was the kind of person who stayed silent until the silence became a weight. So she said, I'm sweet, he muttered. That I'm safe, that I'm not the dream. Marcus didn't respond. I mean, maybe she was venting. People say stupid shit when they're tipsy, trying to look cool in front of friends. You weren't the only one she said it to, Marcus said quietly. That's what stuck with me. She didn't pull one of them aside, she said it to the group. Like she was laying down a fact, like she was proud of it. He stared out into the dark lawn, a single garden light flickering like it couldn't commit to staying on. She didn't walk it back. Nope. No joke after. Marcus shook his head, nothing, just moved on. There it was again, the clarity, not the rage of betrayal, not the stab of jealousy. Just a slow, creeping understanding that the person he loved had once declared him second place, and had done it without flinching. She's never said anything like that to me, he whispered. Marcus tilted his head. That's the point. What? She says it to them because she doesn't think they'll repeat it. She says it to you because she knows you won't leave. The sentence hit like a clean break. And suddenly all those nights where she rolled her eyes at his seriousness, all the times she laughed off his patience, shrugged at his planning, smiled sweetly and said, "You're such a good guy," they sounded different now. He used to think she said those things with love. Now he wasn't so sure it wasn't resignation. He couldn't sleep. It was 2 a.m. when he got up, barefoot, floor cold, the soft mechanical whir of the fridge humming like background noise in a life he suddenly wasn't sure was his. He walked into the kitchen and poured water just to have something to do with his hands. And then he sat down, not because he wanted to, because his body gave up trying to pretend it was still fine. He stared at the fridge door, remembering the magnets she brought back from that weekend trip. The one she booked last minute said she needed air. He remembered her coming home flushed and grateful and generous, said she missed him. Kissed his forehead like he was hers. That had been 3 weeks after the proposal. And now all he could think about was that night. Not the party, not the cake or the lights or the hand she kept resting on his back like they were already married. Just the moment, the proposal, he replayed it. Restaurant, the quiet one she always said felt grown up. She wore a black dress, simple, perfect. He was sweating the whole time, fingers shaking inside his jacket pocket, rehearsing the words he'd rewritten 6 times. He didn't make a speech, just looked at her and said the most honest version of the truth he had. I love you. I want this, all of it, for real. He remembered her reaction. But now it was starting to blur. She didn't gasp. Didn't cry, not right away. She blinked, paused, smiled, said yes like it was an answer to a question she'd already practiced. He thought she was overwhelmed, moved, but there were no tears, just a deep breath and a kiss. He hadn't thought twice about it, until now. Now he wondered if the pause was hesitation, if the smile was strategy, if the kiss was relief that she wouldn't have to fake it anymore. Or maybe she thought she could grow into it. That loving him would be easy. That safe would feel good enough if she wore it long enough. He poured another glass of water and didn't drink it, stared at the faucet like it might explain something. He wasn't even angry, just tired of thinking. Of playing back scenes like an investigator trying to find the frame where it all started to go sideways. She said yes, but maybe she said it because she knew he'd never leave. She noticed the shift 3 days later. They were on the couch, a blanket over their legs, some rom-com she picked streaming quietly while her head rested against his shoulder. He hadn't touched his wine, hadn't laughed at the lines he usually did. She lifted her head a little. Studied him, you okay? Yeah, he said, just tired. She smiled, soft and knowing. You've been saying that a lot lately. He nodded, didn't add anything. She turned her attention back to the screen. But her fingers curled around his forearm tighter than usual. They didn't talk about it. Not then, not later, but something had shifted. She could feel it, and he knew she could. They moved around each other the next few days like two people who had practiced being in sync for so long they could fake it on autopilot. Dishes, emails, dinner, wedding checklist. Final fittings next week, she said while making coffee, and we still need to finalize the table cards. He nodded, right. Her eyes lingered, you sure you're okay? He looked up, why wouldn't I be? She shrugged. You're quieter. I've just been thinking. About what? Everything. She smiled again, tight this time, guarded. That's normal, big stuff coming up, a lot to process. He didn't reply. She stepped forward. Touched his chest lightly with her fingertips. You're not getting cold feet, are you? He looked at her. She was still beautiful, still dressed like she belonged in a catalog. Still carrying that perfume he once said reminded him of early spring, but now even that felt curated. No, he said, just tired. Her hand dropped, she nodded, and that was the moment, the first one. Where they were looking at each other, really looking, but neither one said what they were thinking. It popped up in the group chat like it was nothing. Alyssa. Remember when she said she'd never marry a guy like that? A picture accompanied it. One of those throwback Thursday collage images with bad lighting, crooked smiles. The kind of candid energy you could only get from people who thought they'd be young forever. The girls were huddled on a couch, champagne flutes in hand, faces flushed and half laughing. His fiancée in the center, holding court. He stared at the message, not the image, not the emojis after it, just the sentence. Never marry a guy like that. His chest tightened. The conversation moved quickly, Alyssa making a joke, someone else dropping a gif, another friend piling on with something about tequila and how wild that night was. He scrolled up, backed out, opened it again just to see it fresh. The post wasn't addressed to him, not directly, but there it was, time-stamped, shared in a group he was technically part of but rarely contributed to, meant to be playful, just a memory. But now there was a pattern. It wasn't just Marcus. It wasn't just one bad night, one slip of the tongue, one comment that could be explained away as nerves. This was something else. Never marry a guy like that. Like what? Reliable, predictable. Safe like him, he didn't respond, didn't ask for clarity, didn't forward the message to Marcus and say, look, you were right. He just sat there in the half-dark of the apartment, phone glowing in his hand, scrolling through conversations that suddenly sounded different. He remembered the early days of their relationship, how she'd teased him for being too sweet, how she'd laughed when he triple-checked reservations, how she always told her friends he was such a grown-up. He thought it was affection, admiration even, but now he wasn't sure she wasn't just labeling him, filing him into the safe and manageable category. The plan B she turned into plan A when the other ones flamed out. He'll never leave. He heard it again in Marcus's voice. And now Alyssa, without knowing, had confirmed it. There had been a time when she swore she wouldn't end up with someone like him. And yet here they were, wedding date set, dress bought, vows drafted. But something cracked now, not loud, not dramatic, just permanent. The message came at 10:14 p.m. Marcus again. Simple, unflinching, you deserve someone who sees you. He stared at it. Let it sit there on his lock screen while the room stayed quiet around him. No follow-up, no meme to soften the edges. No just saying disclaimer to walk it back. Just that one line, not someone who feels stuck with you. Someone who knows you're the dream, not the consolation prize. The words sliced clean, not because they were cruel, because they were true. He read them again, and again, and again, until the meaning sank deeper than his lungs. Until it landed in that part of his brain where belief lives, where you don't just hear something, you accept it, you remember it. He set the phone down, sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head low. He thought about the way she looked at him when he fixed things. When he booked the appointments, solved the billing errors, navigated the arguments with her mother. She was grateful, always grateful, but never in awe. Never with that wide-eyed, breathless energy people get when they look at someone they truly admire. Someone they choose, she chose comfort. He gave it freely. But that's not the same as being seen, not really. She told the world he was kind. Stable, safe, she never told the world he was electric. Irreplaceable, not once. He thought about Marcus's face when he said it that night behind the venue, the way his voice didn't shake, the way his loyalty didn't waver. Marcus didn't push, didn't gloat. He just said the thing no one else had the guts to say out loud, "You're not her dream." And maybe that was the moment something in him snapped loose, not out of anger, out of self-respect. He'd spent too long being the stable one, the one people leaned on, the one who never left, but maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be the person someone ran toward, not settled for, not tolerated, chosen, with clarity, with fire. The boutique smelled like perfume and false praise. She stood on the pedestal, a seamstress crouched at her feet, pinning the hem with practiced hands. 3 mirrors framed her from different angles, front, side, three-quarter view. Her dress clung perfectly, strapless, fitted, a line of buttons down the back that took 2 people to close. He sat in the corner chair by the wall, the one meant for fathers and grooms, the quiet seat. The "yes, honey" seat she twirled gently. The mirrors caught the movement and echoed it back. "Too much?" she asked. "No," he said. She smiled. "You sure?" "Yeah." She turned again, slower, admiring. "It's weird, I didn't think I'd look like this. I didn't think I'd feel so bridal." He nodded. "You look great." She looked at herself for a long time, studying her reflection like it might reveal something she didn't quite trust yet. Then softly she asked, "Do you still think I'm beautiful?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Because it was true, she was beautiful. That had never been the problem. He watched her fuss with the neckline. Tug gently at the bodice, shift her posture like she was still unsure of how to wear the weight of it all. She looked staged, perfect but not present, like she was performing joy for a camera that hadn't started rolling yet. The seamstress asked something about shoes. She nodded. He couldn't hear the answer. His mind had already drifted to Marcus's message, to Alyssa's throwback, to the night she said he wasn't the dream. And now here she was, in the dress she'd obsessed over for months, looking at him through the mirror like she wanted to see if he still believed in all of it. He did. He just wasn't sure it was real anymore. Not for her. Not in the way it should have been. He stood, walked to the edge of the platform. She turned slightly, eyes meeting his in the glass. He smiled, said nothing. She smiled back because neither of them were ready to say it, but they both felt it. The guest list sat open on the kitchen table. Names in neat rows, color-coded by relation, +1s marked, meals pre-selected. It was the kind of spreadsheet she loved, organized, flawless, bulletproof. He stared at it for a long time. Then he started deleting. Not in chunks, not with drama, just one name at a time. Alyssa, gone. Kaylee, gone. The friend who laughed too hard at that throwback photo. Gone. He wasn't angry, not anymore. He just didn't want those people in the room. Didn't want their sideways glances, their smirks, their silent complicity in the version of the story he wasn't allowed to hear until it was too late. She didn't notice. They barely looked at the list together anymore. She trusted him to handle the details while she focused on the flowers, the photos, the playlist, so he handled it. He moved one cousin closer to the front, added Marcus to a better table, changed a few seat assignments, cleaned up the document so it looked untouched. He started noticing other things too. She no longer double-checked what he ordered, no longer asked what he was thinking. She floated through their shared life like it was pre-programmed, smooth, unbothered, ready for autopilot, but he wasn't. He started waking up earlier, walking longer routes, talking less, not out of punishment but preservation. Somewhere in all of it, he'd started choosing himself again. Quietly, softly, carefully. She was still talking about flower arches and signature cocktails and whether ivory or bone white photographed better. Still using phrases like "when we're married" and "our forever." But he didn't picture forever anymore. He pictured a day, a moment, a line in the sand, and on the other side of that line him, whole, quiet, unclaimed. He saved the new version of the guest list, closed the laptop, and felt just a little bit more like a man in control of his own ending. She asked it lightly, like she was teasing, like she was asking about the weather. "Are you having doubts?" They were in the car, idling in front of the bakery. She was scrolling through frosting samples on her phone, thumb moving fast, lips pursed like she was reading stock reports instead of dessert options. He didn't answer right away. She glanced over, smiled just barely. "You've been weird, like extra quiet." "I'm just tired," he said. Again, she tilted her head. "I know when you're tired, this isn't tired. This is something else." He stared at the dashboard. The radio was off. The engine hummed beneath them like it was holding its breath. She studied him for a moment, then closed the photo gallery on her phone. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked finally. She frowned. "What night?" "The engagement party." There was a pause just long enough. I mean, yeah, she said slowly. It was sweet, a little chaotic. No, he said, not the party. What you said. Her breath caught just slightly, almost imperceptible, but he saw it. What do you mean? He didn't answer, just let the silence stretch between them like a held note. She blinked, smiled faintly. Babe, what's this about? He turned to look at her. Do you remember saying I'm the safe choice? Her face changed, not dramatically, not with a gasp, just a small shift like a mask sliding half an inch. I don't, she began. He's not the dream, but he'll never leave, he quoted, flat, direct. She stared at him, then finally she looked away. That was nothing, she said, just me talking shit. I was tipsy. I was nervous. So you do remember. She hesitated, it wasn't serious. Then why'd you say it? Her hands gripped her phone tighter now. I don't know, I wasn't thinking. You weren't supposed to hear that. But you meant it. Her lips parted, no words came out. He nodded once, turned forward again, the silence thickened. I didn't mean it like that, she said. You have to believe me. He didn't say anything. Because he wasn't sure what he believed anymore. But for the first time, he knew she remembered every word. It was a joke, she said. They were in the living room late, no music, no wine. Just the soft buzz of the overhead light and a silence thick enough to smother. A stupid, tipsy comment, she went on. I didn't mean it like you think I did. He stood by the kitchen counter, arms loose at his sides, watching her from a distance that felt deeper than the space between them. Her voice cracked just slightly. I was nervous, it was a big night, and they were pressing me with questions. Everyone kept saying how perfect we were and she exhaled hard. I wanted to be funny. I didn't think it'd matter. You called me the safe choice, he said quietly. She stepped forward. That doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't mean you do either. She stopped moving. I was scared, she said. I've always been scared of depending on someone. You're the first person who ever made me feel stable, the first person who didn't make me doubt everything. Then why say it? I don't know, she said, voice rising. Because I've never felt normal in a relationship. Because being safe felt strange. Because maybe I wanted them to think I was still the wild one in the group, the one who didn't settle for a predictable life. He swallowed. I didn't say it to hurt you. But you did say it. She was crying now, quiet tears tracking down her cheeks. You're everything I need, that's why I said yes, because I want this, I want you. He looked at her, not the dress fittings. Not the laughter, not the photos on the fridge, her, and he realized something brutal. She wanted him, but not because he was her dream, because he was her solution. You want me because I make sense, he said. Not because you see me and think, God, I can't believe I found him. She blinked, that's not fair. Isn't it? I love you, she said again, and it sounded like a plea. He nodded, slowly, but he didn't say it back. Because he wasn't sure which version of her he loved anymore. The one who smiled across candlelit tables, or the one who whispered to her friends when she thought he wasn't listening. He found the vows by accident, not snooping. Not searching, just clearing space off the shared desk, moving stacks of notes and receipts and RSVP cards when a soft leather notebook slid open at the corner. Her handwriting, cursive, careful. Beautiful like everything else she curated. He knew he shouldn't read them, but they were left open. The first few lines visible, and they weren't addressed to him, not really. They were addressed to the version of him she showed to her friends. To the image, you are steady where I am storm. You are calm when I unravel. You never raise your voice and you never let go first. You give me peace when the world makes me loud. It sounded poetic, almost moving. But as he read, the pattern came into focus. Every line described what he wasn't, what he didn't do, how he didn't argue, didn't push, didn't quit. It wasn't about love, it was about relief. A quiet celebration that he didn't challenge her chaos. There was no mention of what she loved about him. No fire, no ache, no gravity, just safety. He set the notebook down, didn't mark the page, didn't touch another word. She came in a few minutes later, holding 2 mugs. Hey, she said brightly, I made yours the way you like it. He took the mug, smiled because the moment required it, but inside something closed, something final. Because she'd written vows to a concept, not to a person, not to him. The rehearsal dinner sparkled, that's what people said sparkled, like the fairy lights knew this was the preview to something big, like champagne could hide the smell of doubt. Everyone was there, her parents glowing like they'd bred royalty. His mother soft-eyed and grateful. Groomsmen in button-downs, bridesmaids with their hair loosely curled, all drinking and laughing and toasting with the ease of people who think love is simple. She was magnetic, telling stories, touching arms, looking like she already had the ending in her back pocket. He watched her from across the room, smiled when he needed to, laughed when expected, waited for the part where he got to speak. When the clinking quieted and all eyes turned to him, he rose slowly, held his glass up, looked around at the faces, let it breathe, and then he smiled, a small one, controlled, enough to put everyone at ease. "First, I want to thank everyone for being here," he said. All of this, it means a lot to both of us." A few nods, someone murmured, "Of course." He could feel her watching him, that sparkle in her eyes like she already knew what he was going to say. He turned toward her now just slightly, let the silence stretch 1 second longer. "But before we toast," he said, "I want to share something she once said about me." The room stilled lightly, enough for breath to catch in a few throats. She tilted her head, still smiling, but something flickered, something in the set of her jaw. She was with her friends, it was a night of celebration, and someone asked her about us. About the two of us. The room had gone very still now, and she said, he paused, looked right at her, "He's the safe choice, not the dream, but he'll never leave." Her expression didn't break, not yet. But her grip tightened on the stem of her glass. He let the words hang there, let them wrap around the chandelier light and settle on the polished tablecloths. There was no outrage, no gasp, just stillness. He looked down at his glass, swirled the champagne gently, then raised it again. "To honesty," he said, and drank. He didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just looked at her and read her words back to her, word for word. "He's the safe choice. Not the dream, but he'll never leave." He didn't dress them up, didn't add commentary, didn't pause to cushion the blow. He let them land exactly as they had landed on him. Naked, clean, real, her face changed in slow motion, not horror. Not guilt, recognition. She remembered saying it. She wasn't scrambling for denial. She wasn't shocked by the words. She was shocked they had surfaced. The room froze around her, forks half lowered, mouths half open. The music in the background kept playing, soft and oblivious. Her friends looked at each other. One shifted in her seat. Another stared at her wine like it might offer a way out. Her mother blinked like she hadn't heard right. His mother looked down, and she didn't speak. Not yet. He stayed standing, held her gaze. He saw the flicker then, the crack in her composure, a tremor in the corner of her mouth. Like she wanted to speak but didn't know which version of herself could survive it. He didn't give her the chance to regroup. "Do you still want to marry me?" he asked, quiet, measured, like he was asking about dinner. The question floated above the table like it didn't belong. A direct hit. She blinked and blinked again. The room waited, 30 people holding a breath. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes brimmed just slightly. Not a single tear fell. But the words never came, because the answer wasn't yes, not really, not anymore. He left before dessert, not in a rush, not with a slammed chair or a stormed-out breath. Just quiet steps down the side hallway of the venue, one hand in his pocket, the other brushing lightly against the wall like he needed to feel something solid on the way out. His tux was still buttoned, tie loose but neat. Ring box still in his jacket, the voices behind him faded. A few hushed murmurs, someone calling his name once uncertain. No one followed. He walked to his car, keys already in hand. The gravel crunched under his shoes like applause that came too late. The air outside was cool, honest. The first honest thing all night. He didn't cry, didn't shake, didn't even replay what he'd just done. He just opened the car door, slid in, and sat. Hands on the wheel, engine off for a long time. The ring sat like a weight in his jacket, not heavy enough to break him, just heavy enough to remind him what he almost gave away. He didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel clever. He wasn't proud of exposing her. He was just done. Done pretending, done performing, done being a character in someone else's fantasy where love meant settling and being sweet was code for being tolerated. He reached for the mirror, looked at himself, just long enough to see someone he finally recognized. Then he turned the key, pulled onto the road and drove, no destination, just peace, and for the first time in a long time, clarity. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. One love.